Hello everyone, my name is Jon Cheek. I'm the founder and director of UniTasterDays, and it's great to see so many people here for this Uni Taster Tuesday event. What I'm going to do now is give you a quick brief as far as the event itself, and then I'm going to move on and introduce our speakers today. So as far as this event, this is a Uni Taster Tuesday. We run these events every single Tuesday at 9:30 a.m, 12 p.m, and 3 p.m. as well. The 9:30 events and the 3 p.m. events are subject-specific events, and what I mean by that is it provides more information about studying a particular subject, and it's different subjects every week that we cover. So that's 9:30 and 3. And at 12 o'clock we have general university guidance events where you can find out about general topics in terms of university guidance, which will be really, really useful for you as well. I should add that we've got a hub now of these events, which launched today, and that's at unitasterdays.com/Tuesdays. On the hub, what you can do is browse recordings of previous events, and we've been running these events now for 2 months. So you can browse recordings of events for the last 2 months. You can also book upcoming events, and we've got events open now until towards the end of July, every single Tuesday. So if you're looking at a particular subject, you'll be able to find out details about those subject events as well. Or if you want to find out more about a particular area of university guidance, that's also available to you. I should also add that if you're here and you know which university you're considering and you just want to find out about studying with that university, you can also use another area of UniTasterDays, which will be pretty handy for you as well, and that's unitasterdays.com/online. What we do there is list university events that they deliver directly, and at the moment there's well over 500 events on there listed by universities UK-wide, and that'll be a really useful resource for you as well. But as far as this event, to let you know what's going to go on today, in the event that we've got for you this lunchtime, essentially we're going to have 3 presentations on 3 completely different topics related to university guidance, featuring 3 completely different universities as well. And what I'll do in a second is I'll give a brief overview to our speakers, and then before they start their presentation, I'll give it a full overview at that point. As far as the format, the sessions will be about 15 minutes-ish, give or take 1 or 2 minutes, maybe a little bit shorter, maybe a bit longer. We also have a Q&A open, and it's a great opportunity for you to ask questions as well during the session. So you'll notice right at the foot of your screen, if you're using a PC or a laptop, you've got a Q&A tab. Do ask us your questions. There's going to be 3 people on hand to answer your questions as well. So we'll keep this as interactive as possible and answer questions throughout the session, rather than leave it to the end and make it a bit of a boring Q&A to finish with. And we'll make it a nice interactive session as far as the Q&A as we progress. And then after the 3 presentations that the universities will offer today, we're then going to join them again right at the end, and they'll deliver a 1-minute introduction to the institution. So if you want to know more about studying with the University of Sussex, University of Huddersfield, or University College Birmingham, it's a chance right at the end of the session to have 1 minute to find out more about that institution, given that at the moment, unfortunately, you can't be attending open days in person. So it's a great chance to find out more about university guidance, which is what these events are all about. We run these purely to support students to make informed decisions. So whether that's about general subjects or about subjects themselves, I really hope this session will be really useful for you, and it's great to see a really big live audience already. But as well as that, if you're watching live, hopefully this recording and other recordings will be really useful for you as well. So enough of me, because you've not tuned in to listen to me, you've tuned in to listen to our fantastic speakers. So what we're going to do is introduce things with Craig, and then after Craig, Marica's here from the University of Huddersfield, who's going to do a session on student finance and budgeting. And then last but no means least, Bethan's here from University College Birmingham, who's going to deliver a session on university study skills. But without further ado, if I can now introduce Craig Dove, please. Craig is a student recruitment manager at the University of Sussex. And and Craig, feel free if you want to start getting your session ready now. Craig's going to be doing a session on university applications and admissions. So Craig, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jon, and hello, everybody. So as Jon said, I'm a student recruitment manager at the University of Sussex. I'm not going to go on too long about introductions. It's a special occasion for me. It's the first time I've worn a work shirt in about 3 months, so I've made a special effort. Just starting off with roughly what I'm going to talk about. Jon's given me 10 to 15 minutes to cover what is a fairly significant topic, so I'm going to do my best to condense this into about 10 or 15 minutes. The 4 things that I'm going to cover on the screen now. So I'll cover what the process is and how you go about that, why we use that process as universities, when it takes place, and then how to go about it. So you guys have probably all heard of UCAS. It's an acronym. It stands for the University Colleges Admissions Service. It's run partly through the government, so that it's managed by them. But the reason that it's used is kind of for two reasons. So the first reason is because it makes it fair. So any student that wants to apply to a university in the UK has to apply through UCAS. It doesn't matter what country they've come from, everyone has to follow the same process. So obviously that makes it fair. And then also it makes it easier for teachers. So this process is very heavily kind of monitored by your school and your college. And you can apply for up to 5 different institutions when you go to university. So rather than a school or a teacher having to send off 5 individual applications to each university, UCAS centralises that process. So you complete one online application, and then that application goes to each of the universities that you choose automatically and online. And then once the university receives that application, they'll review that process. I'll talk a bit more about that later, because it can throw up some problems if you're not necessarily applying for the same subjects. So the application itself consists of 4 main components. The first one, as you'd probably expect, is your personal details. So things like name, address, your date of birth, that kind of thing. Probably the most important part is your predicted and your actual grades. So typically students in year 12 will be looking at having a set of GCSEs that they've already got. And if you're applying before you've had your A-levels, before you've sat that and got the results, then you'll be based on predictions. So your teachers will make predictions based on current performance, and then also anything you've done in terms of like mock exams and that kind of thing. And they'll give us an informed decision as to kind of where you're at and what they think you're likely to achieve once it comes to sitting your A-level exams. Then the 2 other kind of key components, so the personal statement and the teacher's reference. There's some similarities with those. So the personal statement is written by the student, you. It's 4,000 characters, which is about a page of A4, and you should be writing that about why you want to study the subject that you've chosen at university. And then similarly, the teacher's reference is more of an assessment from your teacher, or it might be from your teachers. It depends how the school chooses to kind of administrate that. But that's a 4,000 character piece of writing as well. So they have the same amount of space to write about you as you do. And then that helps us, again, make an informed decision in terms of whether or not the student is suited to university. So I just want to say as well, first and foremost, the most important things that universities are looking for, particularly in the current climate, is grades. You know, we want to make sure that our students are equipped to study at university, and the best source of information for us in that respect is looking at predictions and also the GCSE portfolio. And then the personal statement and the teacher's reference are very much there to support the grades. So it really depends on the competitive of the market. At the moment, the market is probably the least competitive it's ever been, particularly around the current scenario with COVID, because we're expecting fewer students to go to university because of the situation that we're in, which means that universities are really desperate to have students come to university and to pay us, basically, is that we need that money to keep ourselves going. So at the moment, students are in a very, very strong position, and particularly you as year 12s will be in a very strong position to go to university next year, which is promising. So in terms of the process itself, and then I'll come on to the timeline in a moment, but obviously the process starts with you as the student. So you need to decide that you want to go to university. During this summer is kind of the time that you might want to start thinking about your personal statement and the kinds of things you'll include in that. Your school and college will support that heavily. So when you go back into year 13 or upper sixth, whatever you call the second year of sixth form, the university will help, your college or school will help you register for the UCAS process. Once you're on UCAS, you submit your application. It's really up to you when you do that. And as I said, I'll come on to the timeline in a minute to give you an idea. There are a couple of deadlines, but usually the ones in schools and colleges is a lot earlier. Once the application goes off, universities see it and they'll review it, and they'll make the decisions, and you'll follow that decision-making process through a part of the UCAS website called UCAS Track. So they'll let you know what the decision is based on the application that you submit. So in terms of the timeline, so this summer is basically the time that you want to be researching and shortlisting. So you could be doing that now. It's also normally the time that students would be going to open days. And obviously that's not really an option right now. What I would suggest, and you can use UniTasterDays to do this, is to look at what universities have got virtual online open days. So I work at the University of Sussex. I don't think ours are actually advertised yet, but we will be hosting virtual online open days. Obviously, this scenario with COVID has led to us having to make a lot of changes in terms of how we work and kind of get our information out to students and parents and other various stakeholders. So we're still kind of working on that, but we will be having one, and so will lots of other universities. So now's the time to be researching and doing those open days if you can. And then the two main deadlines I mentioned. So these are deadlines set by UCAS, and they're deadlines that you could submit afterwards, not so much for the Oxbridge Medicine and Veterinary Science, but the second deadline I'll show you in a minute, you can apply afterwards. But if you want to be considered on a level playing field to all the other candidates, then these are the deadlines you need to adhere to. So the first one, which is for medicine, veterinary science, dentistry, and Oxford and Cambridge, or Oxbridge for short, is the 15th of October. If you're applying for any of those subjects or those institutions, their deadline is much earlier because they will definitely interview, so they need a bit more time. So bear that in mind. You'll want to submit that application earlier than the 15th of October for sure, and your school and college will certainly be promoting that as well. The other official deadline is the 15th of January. So again, bear that in mind. These have been pushed back for this year, so we're not sure what's going to happen for 2021 entry. It could be the case that these dates change given, again, the current scenario with COVID, but at the moment I've not heard otherwise. But on the 15th of January is the UCAS deadline, but again, your school and college will certainly be aiming to have you submit your application before Christmas usually. The sooner you submit the application, generally the sooner you hear. So you'll find that if you submit before Christmas, you could have decisions in November and December, or depending on the university, the decision might come a bit later and could be as late as March. But generally you'll find that the sooner you submit an application, the sooner you get a decision. Then between January and April, universities hold what they call applicant days or admissions days. They're the same thing, different universities call them different things, but those events are similar to open days, but they're only for students that are holding an offer. So where an open day anyone can attend, an admissions day or an applicant day is specifically for people that have an offer from a university. In May is when the student decides which university they want to go to. So best case scenario, you've applied to 5 different institutions. The 5 universities have offered you a place. You choose 2. So you put 1 as your firm choice, and then the second one is your insurance choice, which is basically your backup. And then the other 3 institutions, you choose to reject them, and the process for those universities stop there. And then after that, in the middle of August, so this year A-level results day, I think, is on the 18th of August, but don't quote me on that. It's always around the same time, which is kind of the middle of August. So A-level results come out, you'll either get confirmed or you'll enter the clearing process. So confirmation means you've hit the conditions of your offer. and you're going to the university that you've chosen, which could either be your firm or your insurance choice. And then if you don't get the entry requirements and meet the conditions of your offer, you can choose to enter the process of clearing. Simply put, that's a process where all the universities in the country advertise the courses that they still have places on, and you can just ring them up and ask if you can go based on the grades that you've got. So it's very straightforward. There used to be a bit of a stigma attached with that, but that's certainly disappeared over the years that I've worked in higher education. It's a very legitimate way of going to a good university now. And then depending on the university, at the end of September or beginning of October, your academic term will start. So you'll go to university and have Freshers Week and that kind of thing. So just to give you an idea of university decisions, so the most typical decision is a conditional offer. So a university, once they receive your application, assuming you've applied to universities where you meet roughly the conditions of your offer, so you'll find typical entry requirements on universities' websites and also in their prospectus. So if you've got entry requirements of, say, ABB, and you're applying to universities that are around that kind of area, the chances are you'll receive a conditional offer. And then on results day, if you get around that, you don't necessarily have to hit it bang on. It's often the case that if you drop a grade, or sometimes even two, that you'll still get admitted to that university. So if you meet the conditions of the offer, or you're close to them, you'll get confirmed, so you'll get accepted on your place. The opposite of that is getting rejected, or we don't really like to say that because it sounds a bit rough, but you'll be unsuccessful in your application. So if you miss the conditions of your offer, sometimes by a bit or sometimes by a lot, then you will be unsuccessful and you won't go to your chosen university. And that's when you'll typically enter clearing. And then lastly, the final decision is an unconditional offer. So that means the university is basically saying they don't care what grades you get. They think you're such a good student that they'll accept you regardless of the grades you get on results day. And then lastly, just bear in mind it's one application for all institutions. So you don't ever want to name any specific institutions in your personal statement. And also bear in mind that, again, when you're writing that personal statement, if the subject area or subject title varies a little, or particularly if it varies a lot, just be mindful of that, because you're submitting the same personal statement to every institution. So be aware of that. Usually students will apply for the same subject, or it's close enough. But if you're not, then just be mindful that what you're putting in your personal statement might go to another subject area that's not so relevant. That's a talk for another day on personal statements, but I did just want to kind of highlight it. And also be aware that the personal statement for most universities is the only thing that we've got to assess you as an individual. There's very rarely an interview process for most subjects now, and that's certainly the case at the University of Sussex. So that's why the personal statement is still very helpful for us, but I hope that kind of clarifies the process. There's some information there on various different ways that you can stay up to date with information on Sussex. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening. I'll be in the Q&A bit later, and I really hope that was helpful. So thank you, and I'll hand back to Jon.
Thank you very much, Craig. Brilliant session. Particularly appreciate the UniTasterDays mention, Craig. Thank you. But really useful. Personal statement, like Craig did mention about personal statements. I know he just touched on it, but you mentioned about personal statements, and we've got events on personal statements coming up. We've had events previously, so that'll be really useful as well. I would say now, Craig, you can relax, but your excellent session has resulted in lots of questions, so you'll probably be just as busy over the next 40 minutes as you were over the last 15. So thank you, Craig. And what I'll do now is introduce our next speaker, which is Marica Shelbourne, who's joining us from the University of Huddersfield. Marica is a Schools and Colleges Liaison Officer at the University of Huddersfield, and she's going to deliver a session on student finance and budgeting. So Marica, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so as Jon has introduced me, I won't repeat all that again, but just to give you an idea what myself and the team do, we go to schools and colleges right across the UK, and we provide a whole host of presentations, workshops, assemblies to get you guys ready for university. So what I'm going to cover today is going to be a bit of an introduction to student finance. Now, quite often there can be a stigma around student finance. Sometimes there's misunderstandings about how it works, how much is paid, how much to repay, etc. So hopefully by the end of the presentation it'll be really clear, and I'll give you some links to go to find out anything else if you need it. So what I'm going to be going through is, first of all, what support is available. So you've probably heard the words tuition fees, maintenance loan flying around, but at this point it might not actually mean much to you. I'm then going to go through how you get it, so how do you apply for it. I'm then going to cover when and how you repay it, and then a little bit about how to manage your money when you are at university. Okay, so these are the three things that I'm going to look into. So your tuition fee loan, your maintenance loan, and any additional support. So when you start going to open days, when you start looking through prospectuses, when you're looking online, you will understand that public universities can charge up to £9,250 a year in tuition fees. So when I say tuition fee, think of it as the cost of your course. So all the teaching, the facilities that the universities offers, that is what you are paying for. So the first thing to bear in mind is obviously £9,250 a year is a lot of money. So please don't worry, you do not need to pay this money up front. Your parents don't need to pay a deposit, you don't need to pay a deposit. There is a loan that is available that covers the full cost of that tuition fee loan. And most students who apply to university do actually choose to take out this loan as well. So the tuition fee loan doesn't depend on your household income. So what that means is regardless of what your parents earn, you will get the full amount to pay for the cost of university. So whether your parents earn 20 grand, 100 grand, it doesn't matter. Everybody can apply to get the full cost covered. And you don't need to wake up one morning with £9,000 in your bank and worry about having to transfer it. The loan will be paid directly to the university that you go to at the start of the academic year. So you don't have to deal with that money. So obviously this is a loan and you do need to pay it back. However, it's quite different to probably what you would have heard of. So if you get a mortgage or a car, it works quite differently in the sense that a student loan, you don't actually start paying anything back until you earn enough money. So these figures are at current, they could change, but at current, if you were to go to university, you would not have to pay anything back until you was earning over £26,575. And what I'm going to cover on later in the slides is how much you will start paying back when you earn over that amount. So if you never did earn over that amount, I would hope you do. If you go to university, you would never pay a penny back. And when you do, it's quite a small amount that you will pay every month. Anything that's left after 30 years will be wiped as well. So that's what's also quite different about your traditional sort of loan. So if you've paid £1 back, if you've paid £1,000 back, if you've paid half of it back, whatever is left will be wiped after that 30 years. So that's your tuition fee loan. So everything that I've covered is the cost of your course. Okay, so the second thing that you can apply for is your maintenance loan. So the maintenance loan, the idea is to pay for things such as accommodation, food and drink, bills, transport, basically the cost of living. And you can apply for this whether you choose to stay at home or whether you choose to move away from home. And this money will be paid directly into your bank account, which is why it's important to start thinking about budgeting, because essentially you could be getting anything from £1,000 in your account every term, if not more. So the money will be paid into your bank account in 3 instalments. So it's usually around September time, January time, and April time that you will get them payments. But essentially, you can do what you want with the money. So every student is entitled to some sort of maintenance loan. However, the difference with the maintenance loan is that it does depend on your household income. So whereas the tuition fee loan, everybody gets the same amount to pay for the cost of the course, the maintenance loan is different because everybody will get a different amount depending on essentially what the parents of the household earn. So when I say household income, what I mean is the parents of the household. So if you live with mum and dad, we would look at their income. If you live with stepdad and mum, stepmum, or if you just live with a carer, it's basically the parents of the household. We will look at their income and then we will assess how much you are entitled to for your maintenance loan. I'm going to go through that a bit further through the slides as well. So your maintenance loan also has to be paid back, but the same rule applies that you don't need to pay it back until you are earning over £26,575 a year. So this is a table on what students are entitled to in terms of their household income. Again, obviously this can change. These are the figures at current. So what I'm going to do is, if we just look at the middle column, for example, this column here, elsewhere. So what that means is, if you choose, if you choose to live in student accommodation, then this is what your maintenance loan would be. So if your parents, between them, earn, let's say, £35,000 and you choose to live elsewhere, you can see here, this is the figure that you would be entitled to. If you chose to stay at home, so let's look at the first column here, your parents, between them, earn, let's say, £50,000, this is the amount you'll be entitled to. So just bear in mind, these amounts are per year. So unfortunately, it doesn't mean you'd be getting the £4,000 per term. All these figures will be split into 3, and then you'll get them in the September, January and April. So let's say if you was entitled to this amount here, 3,831, you'd get just over £1,000 a term. So as you can see, if your parents earn £25,000 and under, and you choose to stay at home, let's say, the maximum amount you're going to get is £7,747. So nobody will get more than that on the maintenance loan. The absolute minimum that you're going to get is £3,410. So anything over £60,000 for the household income, you will get at least this amount. So all students will get at least around over £1,000 a term. As you can see in the third column, if you was to live in London, you get a lot more money. That's purely because if you did live in London, the cost of living would be much higher. So we try and accommodate that. If your parents are self-employed, or if a parent is self-employed, a carer, then what we will do is we will assess their income based on the full last tax year. Okay? So how do you get student? So if you want to have a look and see how much you'll be entitled to, so you can get a bit of an idea now of how much you're going to get, and you can start looking and thinking, right, I want to go to this university, this is how much the accommodation is, what am I entitled to? Am I going to need to get a part-time job? Will it cover it? Will it not? You can actually log on to the student finance calculator and you can get a rough idea of what you'd be entitled to. So it might be worth sitting with your parents and just starting to have a look and getting an idea of what you're going to get and what your cost of living is going to be. Okay, so the third thing I'm going to go through is any additional support. So all of these things that I'm going to discuss now is money that essentially is gifted to you, so you don't have to pay it back. So when you do start looking at universities, you'll start becoming familiar with bursaries and scholarships. It's really important that you do your research on these because, as I've said, it's money that you are given that you don't give back. So see what's out there. So if you think of it as a bursary, is usually awarded to students based on their personal circumstances. So it's usually students that are from a lower income family. So I've got an example of a bursary that I'm going to go through. So one of the bursaries that we offer at the University of Huddersfield, just to put it into perspective, is if students come to us and they have a roughly 120 UCAS points and their household income is less than £25,000, we give them students £1,000 in their first year to help them with their study. And many other universities offer this sort of thing as well. So they might use that money to get a laptop, they might get some books, it's just extra help for them to access university. A scholarship is something that universities will reward to students who are outstanding in their subject. So, for example, a university might say, if you come to us on our engineering course and you get 3 A's or an A and 2 B's, etc., as a reward for choosing us, we will give you a £1,000 scholarship. So they're all different at all universities, and if you just go onto the internet and search, bursaries and scholarships at universities, there's absolutely loads of websites that will help you to understand what is out there. If you need any extra support with a disability, there is a disabled student allowance. There's a link on here and these slides will be available after, so you can look on there. There's absolutely loads of support available, whether it's you needed help with transport or any extra support. There's pots of money out there to help you with that. If you're thinking of studying an NHS course, there is also extra funding available, again, that you don't need to pay back, and it's called the NHS Learning Support Fund. So again, there is a link on here that you can go through to look at this in more detail. But for example, if there was a particular, let's say mental health nursing was really struggling to recruit, they might put out there extra money to encourage students to apply. Or if you needed help with childcare, so if you had children but you really wanted to become a nurse, there may be funding that's available to help you with the cost of childcare as well. So if you are thinking of looking at NHS courses, please do look, because there's loads of information out there, and there's also pots of money that are there to be accessed as well. Okay, so this was just the bursary that I've already gone through, an example. So when you are at university, you might want to consider additional sources of income, particularly if you are moving away from home. Not only will this give you extra money to help for the cost of living, but it will really help you with your own set of skills as well. So even if it was working in a bar or a restaurant, obviously I understand that might not be suitable at current, but you could maybe look at working in shops, things like that. Even if it was a couple of shifts a week, it's going to A, help you with your money, and B, it's going to massively help you with all sorts of skills as well. You don't have to go to university as soon as you finish college. You could have a gap year if you wanted to, if you thought you maybe wanted to go away and work for a year and save some money. That's absolutely fine, you can do that. And it might be worth speaking to your parents at this point about, will they be able to help you? What support can they offer you when you're at university? Could they pay your phone bill? Could they maybe help you with your shop once a month? Anything like that's going to massively help you when you are at university. So you apply for student finance online. The deadline does change each year, but it's usually more sort of May time. If you did miss that deadline, you would still get your money, but it's just that you get it late. So really try and make a conscious effort to get that before the deadline, because the last thing you want is all your friends at university have got their money and you're having to wait for that. So just make sure you check the deadline and apply before that. You don't need a confirmed place at university. So if you're thinking, I'm not actually sure if I want to go, I might fancy an apprenticeship, I might want to work, but it's something I'm considering, still apply for it. You won't be penalised for withdrawing that application. Okay, so how do you repay your student loan? This is the bit where often there are quite a lot of misconceptions, so hopefully I'll clarify some of that for you and you will have a good understanding by the end of this. So you will repay 9% of your income over £26,575. So if you don't earn more than that, as you can see, you will simply not pay anything back. When you do start earning over that, you pay 9% of anything over. So for example, if you was earning, so the third column down, if you was earning £30,000, that's £3,425 over that 26,575 threshold. So you would pay 9% of £3,425. So that's around £25.70 a month. If you was earning £40,000, you'd pay 9% of 13,425, which is around £100.60 a month. So you might be thinking at this point, what does that mean? Every time I get a job, I'm going to have to ring and put my new details in. It sounds a bit complicated. Don't worry, it's all worked out for you like a tax. So you won't need to ring every month and tell them what you've earned. It's all worked out for you. So all you would do is you would look at your wage slip and it will tell you how much has been taken, if so. And when you move jobs, it all moves with you. You don't need to do anything. It's all worked out. Okay, so you don't pay anything back until the April after you graduate, and obviously you don't pay anything back till you earn enough. And your monthly repayments will be based on your earnings, not your loan amount. So if you decide to take out the full loan, if you decide to take the full maintenance loan out to the maximum that you're entitled to, please don't think that you're then going to be penalised and paying hundreds and hundreds of pounds a month. Your monthly repayments are based on your earnings, not your loan amount. So to put it simply, if you're not earning enough, you won't stop paying it back, and when you do start earning enough, you will pay based on your earnings. If for whatever reason your income falls back under that £26,000 bracket, you will just stop paying. So if you graduate and you've got a £30,000 job, brilliant, and then for whatever reason, let's say you go part-time and you was then earning 24, your payments would just stop because you are not earning enough. So there is interest levels that will be on your student finance. And again, this is something that changes quite a lot as well, so it's worth looking when you're thinking of going to university at what they are at current. But you will pay the current retail price index, so RPI is what you'll usually hear, and anything up to 3%. So the more money you're earning, you'll be more up to the 3% mark, and the less that you're earning, you'll be more maybe between 1% and 2% on top of the RPI. But you can find out more, again, there's a link there, you can find out more about interest rates and stuff on the website. So it's, the website is actually really handy. So when you've put your application in, you can really easily keep track of what's happening with your application. So if you've forgotten to put your national insurance number in, if you've not popped your bank details on, there's a really simple to-do list that looks like this, and it will just help you keep track and making sure that you're doing your application right. This is what the letter will look like that you will receive for your student finance. So it will tell you what you're entitled to here, look, the amount that you'll get it, and how you're going to get that money as well. So once you've filled out the form, this is what you will receive in the post, and it looks like this. You've got your payment title there and your student finance breakdown, and they'll keep you in the loop at every step as well. Okay, so just some really simple student budgeting tips that you might not have thought of, that sound really simple but that will really help you when you're at university. Plan your budget before you actually start university. So if you're thinking of moving to a big city, for example, be thinking, okay, how much is accommodation going to be? Or if you're thinking of going to a small town, is there different accommodation? How, you know, what's the difference? Could you might pay £80 for being 10 minutes away from a university, but if you're on the doorstep of the university in accommodation, you might find that you pay £30 more for the luxury of being able to roll out of bed. So look at stuff like that. How much is accommodation? What's the cost of living? What's my maintenance loan? What have I got left? Consider having 2 bank accounts. This will really help you. So I'm sure you've got online banking, and it's really simple to set up another account, so you can literally transfer money from account to account on the same app. So if your accommodation and bills were X amount, and what I would be doing is working out how much it is for that full term and transfer that money into the other account and don't touch it. So you know, if you've got, I don't know, £1,000 left, £500 left for the month in a separate account, you can spend that as long as you know that your bills are paid and you've got enough for food, etc. Very obvious, but prioritise essential spending. So make sure you've got enough money for your accommodation, food, travel. You know, you might not think about it, but if you're going home, let's say every weekend if you move away, or if you need to get the bus into university, things like that, sometimes we forget to factor in. Work it out, see how much it's going to cost you. Definitely consider extra sources of income. Again, even if you didn't need it, it's just really good for you as well and your social skills. Even if you work 1 or 2 shifts a week, and speak to your parents about what they are willing to contribute, you know, if they can, if they're in a position to help you. You do need to reapply for student finance every single year. That's because your parents' income could change. So you'll do it for the first year, and then at the end of that term, you'll reapply for that. So this is a very rough guide of typical student expenditure. Again, it depends if you're in a big city or a town or where you choose to study, but very roughly, accommodation, you're looking to pay between around 80 to 120 a month. Food, drink and essentials, this obviously depends whether if you're going to get a takeaway every night, if you're going to go to Sainsbury's, if you're going to go to Lidl. If you are smart with your money and you do make sure that you do a full food shop every week, you could probably get by on about £30 to £50 a week on your shopping. I'm not by any means saying don't treat yourself, but just be thinking about how can I make this money go further. If you're going to share student accommodation with 5 or 6 other students, take it in turns to cook, make meals that can last all week. All that stuff is massively going to help you. So there's loads of discounts that are available on bus and rail travel. Sometimes you'll find that if you speak to a university, they will tell you what's available in the local area. So can you get a pass that's going to help you with travel discount? You've probably heard of NUS cards. So they are £12 a year, but I promise you'll make that money back in your first couple of times that you use it. So you can save on restaurants, you can save on clothes shopping, cinemas, etc. It's really worth getting one of them. So lastly, I know when I started university, I remember getting a really big list of loads of books and materials that we needed to buy we needed to use for the course. And I remember looking, and it was quite a lot of money for all these textbooks. It can be £30 and more. But actually, if you look in the library at your university, if you look online, sometimes you can get books online. Please don't think by any means that you've got to buy every single one of these books at £30 plus. You can probably borrow them. You can look in the library. A lot of stuff is online. If you wanted to buy them all, absolutely fine. But there are definitely much cheaper options for your books and text materials as well. So there's some websites here where you can find out more. So that you can go onto our website, or you can go onto the student room. So the student room is forums that are operated by students. So you can maybe ask them about the cost of living in a certain town. You've got Student Finance England, which is the main website that you can go onto. And again, all of these will be accessible after the session as well. So key things to remember, I do think I've gone into this enough, but tuition fees can be covered in full by a loan. Maintenance loans are there to help cover the cost of living, and they depend on your household income. And it's worth considering additional sources of income when you're at university as well. Okay, so that's everything from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marica, and thanks for stopping the share as well. Excellent session. I really enjoyed that. We did some research over at UniTasterDays, and the biggest barrier by far for students is university fees and finance. So sessions like yours and all the work that you and your colleagues and other universities do on that subject is brilliant. So thank you very much for that and for the session as well. Last but not least, now if I can introduce our final speaker, that's Bethan Ford. Bethan is a Schools Liaison Officer at University College Birmingham, and she's going to deliver a session on university study skills. Really useful subject, especially now where a lot of people are based at home. So without further ado, Bethan, the floor is yours. I'll pass things over to you.
Okay, hello everybody. So hopefully you should be able to hear me. Yeah, as Jon said, my name is Bethan and I am one of the School Liaison Officers at University College Birmingham. So today, before I go into study skills, I'm just going to give you a really quick overview of who University College Birmingham is, because for some of you, this might have been the very first time that you have heard of us. If I can get the screen to just want to progress. Right. So we are both a college and a university. We're based in the city centre of Birmingham and we're quite a small institution. So we have around about 3,000 college students and 5,000 university students. And we are a specialist provider in vocational courses. And many of our degree courses are accredited by the University of Birmingham. So to get you on to looking at study skills, in the room today, we might have a couple of different students who are studying lots of different types of courses. So you may very well be studying A-levels, or maybe you're studying a BTEC, or perhaps you're maybe doing something like an international baccalaureate, or you're doing a vocational study program. So you might have lots of different people here, and you may have all had different reasons why you have chosen to study the course that you're studying now. And it may very well have been because of your subject area of interest, but it also might have been to do with your preferred style of learning or your assessment style. So you might have been more in a preference for coursework, or perhaps you liked exams, or maybe you wanted a course that's a little bit more practical. So lots of different options what you were thinking about when you considered what you're studying now. And that same process will apply when you're looking for universities and for courses. So you may very well look for the different types of methods of assessment or teaching when you're looking at a course, or potentially obviously the subject area and how the course is delivered. So university might be looking more for courses that focus on doing assessments like reports or exams, or maybe you want practical assessments, or you want to do things like blogs or debates. There's things such as presentations or making design challenges, or maybe doing things like academic posters, learning logs, essays, and multiple choice questions. So that same principle of choosing a course based on your preferences, but wanting to be able to, find a course that relates to your interests, but also to how you like to learn and the way that you like to be assessed. That process of using that method would also apply when you come to your study skills, because you'll be looking for study skills that suit you as an individual and your personal preferences. So to get you ready for your study skills, the most important thing to get you set up and ready is to be able to make sure you get your environment right for you. So first of all, you want to make sure that you pick one place in your house, or whether that be at your college or your sixth form, that you really like and really enjoy studying in, and you can make that your study zone. You want to also make sure that you can get yourself comfortable, but not too comfortable. So lots of us at the moment might be thinking, oh, I want to hang out in my pajamas and do my studying like that. But actually getting yourself up and getting yourself dressed will put you in a really good frame of mind, ready to take on your studies. You also want to make sure that you look for lots of natural light. So making sure you're not in a dark, dingy room. You want to be somewhere where you've got lots of lovely light streaming in. I've got a window next to me today, brightening up my work area. You also want to make sure you're thinking about the kind of music you're playing. So whilst we might like to listen to our favourite tunes going on, sometimes those words we're listening to in a song can actually distract us whilst we're studying. So maybe change things up and put on some classical music, or a few different things that maybe aren't so kind of into music with lyrics in, but kind of around your concentration. And then finally, make sure you turn off your phone, or at least try and put it in airplane mode, so that you're not going to be distracted by all your Instagram posts coming in or your WhatsApp messages. Really give yourself a chance to focus on your studies. So we've set up our study environment, so we're all set up, ready to go. Now we need to think about how we can actually approach our studying. So there are a couple of different steps which you can follow to get yourself organised, get yourself set up. Step one is about figuring out how much time you actually have to study, to revise, to complete that piece of coursework. Once you've been able to figure out that amount of time, you can start to put a little bit of a plan together. And in that plan, you want to have a think about which subjects do you want to prioritise, which ones do you maybe need to spend a little bit more time on, which ones you're a little bit more unsure about, which ones do you have got an exam coming up the nearest, or a piece of coursework coming up shortly for you. So just make sure you prioritise your subjects, but whilst you're doing that prioritisation, make sure in your plan that you're also factoring in your time to make sure you can still have some social life, you're planning in doing your exercises, you're planning in a bit of a relaxation time as well. Next, you can break up your subjects into topics. So if you break them down into little bite-sized topics, it's going to be a lot easier rather than going, okay, I'm going to be studying everything about maths today. Actually, break it down into topics. It's going to be a lot more manageable. And step 4 is about giving yourself allocated time to revise. So rather than going, right, I'm going to spend all day revising, you might say, I'm going to spend 30 minutes studying this subject, then I'm going to have a 30-minute break, then I'm going to do 30 minutes of a different topic, and break your time up into 30-minute slots. And that will really help your concentration. Next, stay flexible. It's really important not to get yourself bogged down thinking, I've got to stick to my plan. I've got to make sure I'm, following it to the T. Be flexible. Things change. You might also find that you really get into studying a certain topic. That's absolutely fine. If you want to spend a little bit more than that 30 minutes on it, or you want to change your priorities, absolutely fine. Just stay flexible. And then step 6 is make your timetable achievable. Make sure that you don't try and cram too many elements into it, that you're going to come away from the day thinking, I haven't achieved everything I want to. Make sure you can fit everything in there that you want to be able to do. So I touched on in those steps to setting up your studying about a technique called the Pomodoro technique, which is where you break down your studying into kind of more bite-sized chunks. So their recommended suggestion is that you do 25 minutes of study and then you do a 5-minute break. And it's a lot easier to kind of break down into chunks rather than thinking, going to do a big load of revision or a big load of work in a big chunk of time. Break it down and you're going to find it a little bit easier to be able to cope with and avoid a bit of burnout. Now that you've set up your studying timetable, it's really important to think about how do you learn? What is the best approach for you? And there's lots of different types of learning styles that you can be accustomed to. You might decide that you are a learner of all these different types of styles, or maybe you've got one specific style that you prefer. For me, I'm a combination of 2 different ones, but everybody in this is individual and you'll find one which is your kind of style you look sort of. So first of all, we have visual learners, and you kind of will prefer to use a lot of visual techniques into your revision. So you might like to use things such as different fonts, or using uppercase or lowercase when you're writing, using underlining, using different colours in your revision techniques or whilst you're studying. You might also choose to use things like diagrams to help you explain processes and give you images to kind of break down the subjects. You might also like to do a technique where you replace words with drawings or pictures. So an example could be if you were thinking of psychology and you were looking at Pavlov's dog, you might decide to use an image of a pavlova to represent the Pav, and you might then draw yourself a picture of the dog. So it's about using drawings and pictures to replace words. And you might also like to use things like a mind map, where you put your central theme in the centre and then you break it down and then you break it down further, so you can start examining lots of different topics related to one central theme. If you're more of an oral learner, you're going to prefer to listen and to be able to interact with people in your studying. So you might want to record yourself discussing a topic. You might also decide that you want to meet up with some others and discuss. what you're going to be learning and what you're trying to remember for your exam, or what you're trying to explain in your coursework. And you might also find it useful to listen to podcasts or video recordings around subjects and topics. If you're more of a read-write learner, you're going to prefer to use things in your revision and your studying like lists, or you might want to use titles or headings, giving yourself sort of bullet pointed notes within things. You might also want to be writing out your notes lots of times. You want to put them onto flashcards or maybe put them onto post-it notes around the house. You're going to like to utilise all of these techniques. And then we have kinesthetic learners. So I would say I'm probably a kinesthetic learner, and I really like to use studying techniques by watching a demonstration or seeing somebody actually do what you're trying to learn, or having a go at it yourself. You might also want to read case studies or do role plays or use sort of group activities to refresh your memory around topics or to approach a subject. So those are your 4 different types of learning styles. What you want to make sure you do when you're considering those learning styles is not thinking I have to be just one type of learning style. You can be a combination of them, and you can use lots of different methods throughout your studying to help you. So I've mentioned a few different ways to set up your studying and how to approach it. One of the key things when you're studying is actually looking after your well-being. So make sure you plan in time to have a cup of tea and a biscuit, to eat your fruit and vegetables, to go do some exercise. So it's really important to look after yourself, as well as making sure you've got yourself organised for your studying. So make sure you factor that in. And you can also use a couple of different techniques to reward yourself while you're studying. So let's say you memorise some key facts for an essay topic. Give yourself a treat of a tasty cake, or let's say you manage to stick to your revision plan all day. You can treat yourself with meeting up with your friends. So give yourself lots of little rewards as you're going through your studying journey. You might also want to use study groups. So in your study groups, you could be doing this in person, or you could be doing it digitally at the moment. You might decide to set up a WhatsApp group, and you can chat to your friends, your kind of colleagues, also being able to have a discussion around topics, or maybe you're looking at a certain revision theme, you want to have a chat about it. So meeting up with people can really keep you motivated. You can also use things like app blockers, which are a really great way to be able to stop yourself from getting distracted from your phone. So you can set timers on your phone to limit the amount of time that you spend on an app. You can do it so you can stop notifications coming through. And there are so many different ones that you can find out on the internet to use. So if you are a bit attracted to your phone whilst you're studying and get distracted, this might be something you want to consider. And then the most important thing when you're studying, above all else, is keeping in mind that end goal. It will be worth the effort that you're putting in. It will be worth the time planning your studying approach. And just keep in mind that getting the grades to go to university, or to produce the grades, the time that you're working on, or getting through those exams. Keep that goal in sight, and it really will be worth it. So I really hope that you've been able to take away a few different studying techniques there. There are so many different ones out there, but just remember, pick what works for you, and good luck with it all. So thank you very much, everybody, and I'll hand over to Jon now.